In this activity I'm going to demonstrate a technique called Dictogloss. It's quite a standard technique, and the basic idea is that students hear a text, a short text, 2 or 3 times. For this I'm going to use a short story called The Lady of Shalott. The full lesson plan is on my website, and after hearing it 2 or 3 times, the idea is that students then have to reconstruct the text. Of course, it's impossible to reconstruct it, or rather to rewrite it word for word. The idea is that they have to capture the essence, the main ideas, the meaning of the text as accurately as they can. They'll use a lot of their own language in doing so, and they'll hopefully they're going to use some key expressions, words, phrases from the text along the way. And there's a lot of variations that you can use with a Dictogloss. I'm going to show you one here. Well, this is the story. The story is called The Lady of Shalott. Now, once upon a time, in a grey tower, on an island in the middle of a river which flowed to Camelot, there was a prisoner, and her name was Elaine. And for years Elaine had been trapped in the grey tower by an evil curse. Not only was she unable to leave the tower, she couldn't even look out of the window. In fact, her only connection with the outside world was through the reflections in a large mirror which hung on the wall. Now, Elaine spent her time doing 2 things. First of all, one thing that she loved to do was to sing. She loved singing, and she would sing very beautifully. The second thing she did was to weave tapestries. She would capture images of the things she saw reflected in the mirror from the world outside. And nobody knew that Elaine was there. Nobody even knew that she existed. Sometimes passers-by would hear her song, and they thought that the tower was haunted. They thought that Elaine was a ghost. Of course, the tower wasn't haunted. Elaine wasn't a ghost. She was very much alive. And then, one day, everything changed. Elaine caught a glimpse of a certain knight in shining armour as he rode past the grey tower on his way to Camelot. Now, captivated and forgetting the curse, Elaine took 3 steps towards the window, and she looked out directly at the back of Sir Lancelot. Now, the mirror cracked, and Elaine ran down the spiral staircase and out of the tower. She got into a boat and went down the river towards Camelot after Sir Lancelot. And as she went, she started to sing her last song. And as she did so, the curse started to work its magic. And then the boat landed on the banks of Camelot, and the villagers rushed to see the sight of this girl, beautiful yet lifeless. And Sir Lancelot stepped forward and took one look and thought to himself that here lay the most lovely girl he had ever seen. And all he could say was, "God have mercy on her soul." And that's the end of the story. Fact, her only connection Right. This is going to be collaborative. This is one text per group. And this is where you're going to write your text.
Wow.
So I want you to make good use of the whole piece of paper. So you start here. What are the first words?
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time. There it was. And try and end right down there. The important thing is, the important thing is that although only one person is writing, 3 people are working together. So this is a collaborative writing. I'm going to give you some pens. Okay?
Yeah, please.
She used to
Help. That wasn't the end of the activity. Unfortunately, I didn't take my camera into the classroom the next day. I forgot it. So I'm going to tell you what students do at this stage. This could be day 2. Just before I tell you what the students do, just let me explain how I prepared the spoken text, the story of the Lady of Shalott. Here is the text right here. Now, I didn't read it out word for word to my students. I tried to memorise most of it, but I created a cheat sheet, a crib sheet. In doing so, I made a list of key ideas and pieces of language from the text that I wanted to incorporate into my recital of it. So let's look at this part here. If I show you the last paragraph, I've got mirror cracked, spiral staircase, sang her last song, work its magic, beautiful yet lifeless. Now I know that if I go through these 5 items of vocabulary, I'm going to keep on the pathway of the story. Of course, I'm not going to recite the story exactly as it is on the text, but that's the nature of this type of activity. Now that's how I prepared my text, my spoken text, and there's a parallel between that and the follow-up for students. What students do is, once they've been given their own copies of the text, I ask them to go through it and choose 10 phrases or words or chunks of language or expressions or idioms and underline them. I then ask them to write them down on the reverse side of the page, just like I've done here, from top to bottom in the same order that they appear in the story, and then it's their turn to recite the story. So pair them up, and with their partner, student A should recite the story from memory but using the words and phrases that he or she has chosen as a guide. This does 2 things. It keeps the student on the right track, and it also causes the student to produce the language that he's chosen. there's going to be a tendency or a temptation to turn over and peek, perhaps. So you can tell your students that while they're doing this, while they're reciting the story to their partner, they can turn over the page and peek at the text whenever they need some support with grammar, for example, to connect ideas or whatever. They can turn over and peek 3 times and let them get on with that. They pair up, they tell their stories to each other, then roles are reversed and the other student tells the story to their partner. And that's it really. There's some other follow-ups and they're on the lesson plan.